This is a milestone episode of the classic American TV series Better Call Saul, marking the beginning of the intersection of the two main storylines, after Jimmy gradually transforms into Saul. For some reason, the criminal Nacho seeks him out, although Jimmy's current career path is focused on being a criminal defense attorney for lawbreakers. He is still reluctant to deal with someone like Nacho. After all, Jimmy has previously experienced their ruthlessness. When Jimmy gets into Nacho's car, he breaks out in a cold sweat. He cautiously shifts his seat and notices a gun tucked between the front seats. At this moment, Jimmy's mind is working overtime, looking around for a way to escape, but he doesn't have the guts to run. Soon, Jimmy is taken to a garage, where the enclosed space feels particularly oppressive. Seeing Nacho and Lalo remain silent, Jimmy is the first to break the silence. Thinking that he's here because of some previous conflict with Nacho, Lalo said he was Tuco's cousin. He had heard that Jimmy had the ability to turn black and white upside down, and he wanted Jimmy to do something for him. Lalo wants Jimmy to relay some information to Crazy 8, who has been arrested by the police. Jimmy suggests he could give them a free phone so they could communicate directly, but Lalo insists that having a lawyer deliver the message would be more effective. Unable to argue, Jimmy tries to raise his attorney fee in an attempt to get Lalo to reject him. After some serious-sounding but absurd calculations, Jimmy quotes $7,925. However, for criminals, any problem that can be solved with money is not really a problem. Lalo immediately pulls out $8,000 and hands it to Jimmy, telling him to keep the change. Greedy Jimmy reluctantly accepts the money. After all, high risks come with high rewards, which seems fair enough. That evening, Jimmy returns home but doesn't tell Kim about this incident. Kim seems to be in a good mood because her cases tomorrow involve providing pro bono defense for those in need. Jimmy raises a toast to Kim's sense of justice. Here the director gives multiple shots of Kim looking at the bottle of wine on the railing, which also serves as a setup for a later storyline. Kim asks about Jimmy's day at work, but he gives vague and evasive answers. It's clear to anyone listening that things didn't go well, but Jimmy remains relatively optimistic, stating that his financial earnings for the day were quite substantial. Meanwhile, Mike, having parted ways with Gus, hasn't found his next job yet. His daughter-in-law Stacy calls, asking Mike to help watch his granddaughter Kaylee. Mike gladly agrees, as there's nothing that makes him happier than spending time with his granddaughter. However, innocent Kaylee brings up the topic of her deceased father today, accidentally touching a deep wound in Mike's heart. As a result, Mike couldn't control his emotions and threw a tantrum at his adorable granddaughter.
I told you to make those even.
I am.
No, you're not! You're making a mess! You either do it right or you don't do it.
But I want to do it.
You're done. You are done!
This is the first time Mike has ever gotten angry with his granddaughter. When Stacy returns from work that evening, she notices that Mike seems a bit off, but the taciturn Mike doesn't offer much explanation. Mike then heads to a bar to drown his sorrows, drinking until the wee hours of the morning. On his way home, he encounters a group of thugs who decide to target the drunken Mike. However, to their surprise, this old man can really fight.
So?
Meanwhile, Nacho's father, Manuel, confronts Nacho, saying that someone has recently offered a high price to buy his auto repair shop. Manuel suspects that the person was sent by Nacho and guesses that Nacho is trying to get him to run away together, but Manuel firmly states that he will never escape with Nacho. This puts Nacho in a difficult position, as it seems he must continue working as Gus's informant to ensure his father's safety. On the other side, Jimmy, acting as a lawyer, visits Crazy 8 at the police station. When Crazy 8 hears that Jimmy was sent by Lalo, he quickly swears that he hasn't said anything. Jimmy tells Crazy 8 to stay calm and shows him what Lalo wants him to see. The scene shifts to DEA Captain Hank arriving at the police station with his colleague Steven. It turns out that Lalo wants Crazy 8 to report Gus's stash house to the authorities, in order to weaken Gus's influence in the north. Lalo knows that only if Gus can't bring in profit for the boss can he make a move against Gus. However, before Crazy 8 can disclose any important information, Jimmy arrives just in time. He accuses Hank and Steven of negotiating without the presence of Crazy 8's lawyer and demands they leave immediately. Hank replies that Crazy 8 has waived his right to a lawyer, but Jimmy doesn't believe him. However, Crazy 8 insists he wants to confess to them. This leads to an argument between Jimmy and Crazy 8 in front of Hank and Steven. Unbeknownst to them, this is all part of Jimmy's pre-rehearsed plan to put on a show for Hank and Steven. After the argument, Jimmy pretends to concede, but Hank feels played and decides to leave with Steven. Seeing that Hank and Steven are serious about leaving, Jimmy hastily relents and calls them back. Hank wasn't going to fall for that easily, and he made a condition. The information provided had to enable them to arrest people. Jimmy and Crazy 8, though hesitant, have no choice but to agree to Hank's terms, as this is the task assigned by their boss, Lalo. Thus, Crazy 8 becomes a DEA informant, which aligns with the storyline in Breaking Bad. After the DEA discovers Crazy 8 is missing, Hank laments the loss of their informant. After completing the task, Jimmy reports back to Lalo, emphasizing how cooperative Crazy 8 was with Lalo's demands. Aiming to protect Crazy 8's life, Lalo was impressed with Jimmy's reliability and considers using him again in the future. As Lalo is about to leave, Jimmy claims he's too busy and requests that Lalo find another lawyer, but this isn't Jimmy's decision to make. Lalo is confident that Jimmy will make time for him. Jimmy wonders what he's gotten himself into. Nacho advises him not to inquire too much, as once on a criminal ship, there's no getting off. Meanwhile, Kim, who is defending community cases, receives a call from her boss, Rick. Kim thought she had the day off, but she's urged to handle the Mesa Verde bank case since the bank is the firm's major client. This time, the bank's expansion is blocked by a stubborn homeowner, and they need a lawyer to mediate. Kim knocks on the door for a while before an old man slowly opens it. Everett is firm, making Kim negotiate from the doorway as he pulls up a chair to sit. Negotiating under such conditions is nearly impossible. Soon, Kim is driven out by Everett. As Kim is about to leave, Everett sarcastically comments that she's the type to do some bad deeds and then donate a little money to make up for it. This remark infuriates Kim.
Listen to me. You do not get to make up your own rules. Put on your big boy pants and face reality. No one is mistreating you here. We were trying to meet you halfway. Well, that's over. And you know what happens after that? The sheriff comes out and kicks you out of here, and you get nothing. Do you think you're special? A contract means something. It's the law, and it's enforceable. Deal with it.
Paige feels that Kim has done her part, though the negotiation failed. On the way back, Kim keeps thinking about Everett's words. She believes Everett is part of an underprivileged group, and she shouldn't be siding with the bank to bully him. So, Kim returns to Everett's place, helping him find some cost-effective housing options, trying to assist in whatever way she can, but Everett seems ungrateful. Kim shares a heartbreaking story from her childhood, trying to connect with Everett. Unexpectedly, Everett sees this as another one of Kim's fabricated lies.
You'll say anything to get what you want, won't you?
This remark truly hurts Kim, because when she used to con people with Jimmy, lies would work. Now, when she's telling the truth, she's taken for a liar. When Kim returns home, she sees Jimmy drinking alone on the balcony. She lights a cigarette. Today, things didn't go well for either of them. Without saying a word, they understand each other's feelings through their expressions. They share a cigarette as usual. Jimmy made a gesture to pretend to throw the bottle, but this time Kim suddenly unleashed herself. She demonstrates by throwing a bottle first, and Jimmy follows suit. The last time they drank on the balcony, the director showed Kim looking at the bottles on the railing, foreshadowing this scene. Such techniques are commonly used by directors, with many similar scenes in Breaking Bad. They throw more bottles, getting increasingly into it, until a neighbor spots them and they retreat inside. They feel a genuine joy in breaking the rules, setting the stage for their increasingly wayward path. Meanwhile, Nacho, under Gus's control, reveals Lalo's strategy. Hearing the reported time and place of the deal, Tyrus instinctively wants to call and cancel it, but Tyrus fails to consider the bigger picture. If the DEA finds nothing, Lalo will know there's a mole. Putting Nacho in danger, Gus would rather sacrifice money than lose the undercover operative who has close ties with Lalo.
The dead drops remain.
To get back at his former boss, Howard, Jimmy spends money on a few bowling balls and hurls them at Howard's house. The first ball misses entirely. He quickly peeks through the front gate, spots Howard's cherished Jaguar, and with all his might, throws the second ball. The second ball hits the hood squarely, and Jimmy grins mischievously. He quickly climbed up the gate to survey his handiwork and made a victory gesture. He throws the last bowling ball with full force, smashing the car window perfectly. A bewildered Howard comes to the balcony, seeing his beloved car wrecked. countless curses running through his mind. Jimmy did this because Howard's recent antics had infuriated him. Previously, Howard had intended to bring Jimmy into his firm, but Jimmy had no interest in working for HHM. Jimmy had ambitious plans to start his own practice as a criminal defense lawyer specializing in defending criminals. When he learned that Jimmy was practicing under the name Saul Goodman, Howard thought that HHM had let Jimmy down before. They should have hired Jimmy as a lawyer, but due to Chuck's interference, Jimmy never got the chance. Howard admitted past mistakes and offered Jimmy a position at the firm. Jimmy paused and said that after all that had happened between them, working together now would feel awkward, but Howard said it was all between you and your brother. Hearing this, Jimmy was speechless and subtly declined Howard's offer by referring to his experiences at DM. However, Howard still believed Jimmy wanted to work at his firm. Thinking it was the reason Jimmy pursued a law degree, Howard felt that Jimmy's style matched HHM's future expansion needs and wanted Jimmy's help. But Howard didn't realize that his attitude made Jimmy very uncomfortable. To Jimmy, it seemed that Howard was disregarding his choices and only considering his own interests, as if he were doing Jimmy a favor by offering him the job. So, Jimmy decided to teach Howard a lesson. The bowling ball incident was Jimmy's first move in pranking Howard. A few days later, Jimmy hired 2 prostitutes to play a prank on Howard while he was working with his partners.
Can I help you?
Howie, you know.
I don't know them. Ladies, I don't know you. This is some sort of mistake. So.
Yeah, we made a mistake, all right. Joe Dog ain't happy. You owe us.
Owe you?
Yeah. Oh. You can't take a ride on a Carnival cruise and only pay for a tugboat. You know what I'm saying?
Jimmy was so happy to see Howard make a fool of himself and watch from the outside. Jimmy didn't realize his actions were excessive. Instead, he felt quite clever. Meanwhile, because Kim couldn't persuade Everett to relocate, she proposed a new bank site to the client. Kim argued the advantages of the new location from all angles, but Kevin and Paige rejected the proposal. After all, a lot of resources had already been invested in the original site, which legally belonged to Mesa Verde Bank. Kevin stated he wouldn't change his strategy because of a single holdout. Kim is doing this to protect the vulnerable, but unfortunately she doesn't have the power to decide and she has to accept the reality. However, Kim wasn't willing to give up. Her current goal was to help the underprivileged, so she turned to Jimmy for assistance. After discussing with Jimmy, they decided to give Mesa Verde Bank a hard time. The plan began with Jimmy, as a lawyer, visiting Everett's house. Everett, thinking Jimmy was there to pressure him into compromising, refused to let him in, but Jimmy expressed his own hatred for Mesa Verde Bank. Seeing that the lawyer was on his side, Everett agreed to let Jimmy defend him. The next day, when the construction team arrived to start work, Jimmy stopped them by claiming they had the wrong address. The sheriff executing the eviction order confirmed the address was 1130. This is also shown in this shot of Kim's first visit to Everett's house, when the post on the mailbox at Everett's front door says 1130, while the current post has nothing on it, which is obviously a temporary replacement of the post by Jimmy. This is Jimmy's specialty. Previously, to help Kim win back the Mesa Verde Bank case, Jimmy used the same address-switching trick against Howard and Chuck. The contractor was certain this was 1130 and insisted he wasn't mistaken, but Everett asserted his house was 1240. The sheriff asked if Everett had any proof, and Everett produced envelopes from the mailbox, all addressed to 1240. The contractor claimed that anyone could print such envelopes, so they couldn't be used as evidence, but as a lawyer Jimmy suggested that the sheriff or investigate before carrying out the task. After all, he cannot afford the responsibility of the wrong. Thus, Jimmy's delaying tactic worked, causing the construction team to incur idle time costs. Word of this quickly reached Kevin, although the ruse was soon resolved. Kevin saw the day's delay as a victory for Everett. Just when Kevin thought construction could resume the next day, Kim confessed that Everett's lawyer was her boyfriend, Jimmy. In order to avoid suspicion, Kim asked to be removed from the project and have someone else handle it. But Kevin saw this as Everett's ploy. He believed Everett felt threatened by Kim's strong negotiation tactics and brought in Jimmy to force Kim off the project. Thinking he had figured it all out, Kevin refused to replace Kim. Little did he know, this was exactly Kim and Jimmy's plan. That evening, when they got home, Kim shared the day's events with Jimmy. Hearing that Kevin took the bait, Jimmy became intrigued, curious about Kevin's reaction. So, Jimmy had Kim mimic Kevin's actions and tone while he played Kim's role.
Lawyer comes in, crazy comes out. I need that call center real bad.
Of course, Kevin.
Wait, are you being me?
Yes, this is you. Yes, go on.
No, you do whatever it takes. I don't like waiting one bit. Never have, never will. Bottom line, breaking ground. More statues. Kim, you get him now. Blah, 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 blah.
Seeing Kim's spot-on imitation, the humorous Jimmy couldn't resist adding a few comments. Meanwhile, the unemployed Mike planned to visit Kaylee again, but Stacy, sensing he wasn't quite himself lately, texted him not to come. Mike didn't see the message and insisted that he would apologize to Kaylee for losing his temper last time, but Stacy's response made him feel like an outsider.
Let you get back to yourself.
Get back to myself?
Something's going on with you. I don't know what, but I'd be more comfortable if you didn't sit for Kaylee. For tonight.
Hearing this, Mike didn't offer much explanation and angrily left. Like before, Mike drank heavily into the night and ran into the same group of thugs. Because they failed last time, they decided to teach the old man a lesson. At first, Mike managed to take down 2 of them, but outnumbered, he was soon overwhelmed and knocked to the ground. Worse, one of the thugs pulled out a knife and stabbed Mike in the abdomen. Fortunately, the wound wasn't fatal, and Mike was saved. When he awoke, he found himself in a mysterious courtyard. The question is, who saved the critically injured Mike?